Have you ever heard of blue zones? Blue zones are 5 geographic regions around the world where people live the longest and are the healthiest. I love learning about blue zones because as we've studied their culture, we've discovered what each of these 5 areas have in common, and 9 simple changes we can make to improve our own health, longevity, and quality of life. Stay tuned to find out more. And also, I want to share a review from a listener. This is from Habananaby, and this is what she says. I don't even know where to begin. In the last 12 months, my world has crumbled. My mom, who is also a best friend and advocate, was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer and passed away 4 months after diagnosis. My husband was laid off from his job. My in-laws needed to stay with us due to a home loss, and my dad was just diagnosed with prostate cancer. Ouch. Gratefully, my husband has found a job and things are looking up, but there is still a heavy grief and sadness that weighs on my mind. I'm at the very beginning of a healing journey and look forward to what Kendra will teach me. I think this podcast is a tender mercy from God. Thank you so much for sharing your review. And my heart goes out to you for all the things that you're experiencing. And I really do hope and pray that this will help you and lift you in all the things that you are going through currently. Thank you so much for sharing and supporting, even in the midst of everything that's going on for you. I really appreciate that. And thank you all for your reviews. And I will continue to share those on and off throughout these podcast episodes. Now let's get back to blue zones. Hello, I'm Kendra Nielsen. Welcome to Fulfillment Therapy, where you will improve your relationship with yourself, your loved ones, and with God. You'll find healing, wellness, crucial mindset shifts, and self-development help. I'm a licensed therapist, personal trainer, and coach. In this podcast, you'll learn the skills and confidence needed to transform your life from merely surviving to living a fulfilling, flourishing life. You can't reach your God-given potential and become who you were meant to become by remaining where you are. If you're ready, we'll create an ignited life you can't wait to wake up to. And yes, it's possible. It's your time to shine, my friend. Welcome to episode 23. Secrets from Centenarians. What blue zones teach us about optimizing our health. And just in case you don't know, centenarians are those that live over 100 years old. I came across several podcasts a few years ago on blue zones that I really enjoyed. I follow several mental health podcasts and physical health podcasts because of my therapy background and my personal training background. And because of my education and training, I really hate fad diets and promises of short-term fixes that can't deliver. But blue zones really resonated with me because they simply researched the healthiest, longest living people in the world, and then they went and studied them to learn their secrets to their successes. And I'm going to share those secrets with you in just a minute. And just a reminder that I'll also share a fun viral video suggestion at the end. So stay tuned for a bit of humor at the end that is also helpful for us therapeutically. And I will also link that in the show notes. In the review that I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, the listener had just lost her mother. And I've shared on this podcast too that in the last 3 years, I've lost my brother, my grandma, my aunt, my stepdad, my young neighbor, a friend, and others. So death has really been on my mind quite a bit more than I would say usual. Now, you may or may not have experienced the death of a loved one recently, so maybe this is not on your mind as much, but maybe health is, and that desire to have an optimal quality of life. Whatever it is, I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. Dan Buettner was the first one who studied the world's longest lived people and shares the common practices of these areas to live a longer, healthier life. So in his TED Talk, He said 10% of how long the average person lives is dictated by our genes. The other 90% is dictated by our lifestyle. So that's 90% that's dictated by our lifestyle, according to Dan Buettner. Now, if that's accurate, that's pretty great news because that means we have a lot of control over our longevity. A lot more than we might have thought initially. So Dan teamed up with National Geographic and the National Institute on Aging and found 5 geographic areas where people were living the longest and healthiest lives. I just love that they thought to do this. It's like, why don't we just find where the healthiest people are and the longest living people and go study them? That just makes complete sense to me. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the life expectancy currently in America is about 77 or 78. I thought it was so much higher than that. We're talking about averages across America. And we should be living about 12 extra years free of disease, according to what Dan was saying on his TED Talk. And you can access that in the show notes as well to see that. He also said that only 1 out of 5,000 people in America live to be 100. I don't know if that's astonishing to you, but that seems so low to me and very concerning. So Dan went out and studied these places. He's also an explorer as part of his title and worked, like I said, closely with National Geographic. And he went to those 5 places in the world and interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people. So these 5 places are Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Icaria, Greece, and Loma Linda, California, which I will explain why there's an American one in there because that doesn't seem to make sense. So to qualify as blue zones, these communities also have to be largely free of things like heart disease, obesity, cancer, and diabetes, and things like that. So these are healthy areas. It's not just people reaching 100 and older and being in ill health. So keep that in mind. Dan Buettner shared a little bit about each of these areas. For example, in the highlands of Sardinia, 102-year-olds will still ride their bikes to work, and they look young. They're not really stooped over and struggling to move, but they're very active. They remain active throughout their life. The oldest females are found in Okinawa, Japan, and have 5 times as many centenarians. And you grow up with this close-knit group of friends called a moai. I think that's how you pronounce it. From my understanding, this is a group of people that you are born with, like in the same age region, and you stay almost like this tight-knit book club throughout your entire life. I know that's sort of a poor example, but if you have a tight-knit book club, you might understand. I have one, and they're amazing. And we've only been together, I don't even know now, maybe 7 years, and it feels amazing to have that tribe that has your back, and that's what these people have, except for it's for their entire lives. In America, 15 years ago, the average American only had 3 good friends, and now we are down to 1.5. I'm sure you're asking yourself, well, how many friends do I have? Hopefully it's not 1.5. But yeah, just think about that. How many people can you really reach out to when you're struggling and that you feel really connected to? And sometimes it can be hard to put a number on that, but I feel like I have a decent small group of good friends and a bigger group of friends that I know I can reach out to, but we just don't see each other quite as much. I love this part that Dan Buettner shared about Okinawa. He said in Okinawa, there isn't even a word for retirement. So people still have a purpose even as they age, and they're very much connected with their communities and respected. I just love studying healthy cultures because there's so many things that we can learn from each other. Another thing that I love that the Japanese teach is something called ikigai. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I'm pretty sure I am. Ikigai is a Japanese term that means the reason for which you wake up in the morning, or your direction or purpose in life. And I've talked a lot about that. I just didn't know there was this Japanese term for it. And especially in Okinawa, they really seem to know what their ikigai is, or their reason for waking up each morning. They really have a purpose and a direction, and that is at the forefront of their mind. And that very much helps in their longevity, which I'll explain more in a second. Now, in Loma Linda, California, this is a Seventh-day Adventist community that's very healthy. Now we have one just down the street, and I have neighbor friends just down the street that are also Seventh-day Adventists, and I really appreciate their culture. They are very healthy, very friendly, amazing people, and I would very much like to rub shoulders with them more often. But they do a lot of nature walks, and they eat very well. This is just a big community of them there, and that's why it's so healthy in that little pocket and not a big chunk of California. For most of these blue zones, it's just a pocket that have these exceptional habits that keep them living so well. All right, are you ready for me to share these 9 things that each of these geographical areas has in common? I know that I am. Okay, number 1, they all move naturally. So they get more physically active by walking in the community or doing manual labor around the house and the yard and by growing gardens and things like that. But it is not this exercise like where they go to the gym. It's more functional movement that they continually maintain throughout their life. Like some of them, they live in the highlands, so they're going up and down stairs all day long. And they don't have the modern conveniences where they are pushing buttons or taking elevators and escalators constantly or things like that. It's very much a part of their culture to move throughout the day. I'm always amazed by how many steps I get with just a few short walks in the day and how great it feels to do gardening and yard work sometimes, not all the time, instead of doing a workout sometimes. So often in the summers, my workouts will vary and I'll get outside so much more and do more of that functional movement for a change of pace. But I would really like to do that more, especially when you learn that these are communities with amazing health and there's something to learn from them. Number 2, know your purpose. People who don't know why they get up in the morning live up to 7 years longer than those who don't. So you guys, you're going to buy yourself 7 years approximately when you know your why. So when I talk about those things, there's a reason for it. These people are healthier and happier. So when we talk about your purpose, your calling, your passions in life, your why, this is the reason for finding those things out. Life is so much more beautiful and fulfilling when we know our purpose. So do you focus on your why when you wake up? I hope that you do, because it may give you those 7 extra years of life. I know you want them, especially if they're disease-free. Number 3, downshift. Dan shares that in order to reverse inflammation related to every major age-related disease, that we need to find time each day to either meditate or nap or pray or commune with friends. So as he talks about those things, I just kind of think of this time out, not this negative time out that we do for our kids sometimes, but this time to step away and really be still, almost the stillness. The only part that's not very still and quiet might be communing with friends. But mostly here, this is prayer, meditation, or naps. And this deep connection that also aids in longevity, but I'll talk about that more in a second. Number 4, the 80% rule. Apparently it takes your stomach 20 minutes to tell the brain that it's full. And this causes a lot of people to accidentally overeat, which I definitely am guilty of, I'm not going to lie. So stop eating when you're 80% full. I told my husband about this several years ago, and we'll sometimes remind each other about this concept again. I honestly wish we would remember more. But in Okinawa, Japan, they call this harahachibu. And I know that I demolished that pronunciation, but the whole point is that you simply stop eating when you're 80% full. And when you eat, you're eating mindfully, and you're being present, and you're not rushing things, and you're paying attention to those people in the room and slowing down, so that you're understanding the signals from your body and recognizing when you are 80% full. I just love this eating hack. It's simple to remember, but it's not always easy to do, but it can be a work in progress. Now, I've heard of this before, and I've even had my personal training clients track each meal for a month and mark if they ate until they were 80% full. So they would learn to eat more mindfully. And I also had them write down their food mood, so that they could be more aware of patterns that they were seeing in their life when they were eating. A lot of them talked about how they were often overeating when they're feeling lonely or depressed or angry and things like that. But that was just a useful tool that my clients often liked. Number 5, plant slant. Eat a mostly plant-based diet heavy on beans, nuts, and green plants. It's just really important to have about half of your plate be produce. And this is consistent with that. So I found through my years and years in the wellness industry, because I've been in that industry even longer than mental health, I've just found that there's so many trendy diets. For example, these really high protein diets that always have different names. And it just doesn't sit right with me. Now, I'm not telling you to go out there and not do this or do this. I'm not going to do that. I want you to listen to your body and get familiar with understanding what you need individually and tune out what other people start to say. But I want you to do so wisely. You know your body best and understand when you feel good or when you don't feel good. So often personal trainers, or even just in some of these podcast episodes, we can help you start to be more aware and more mindful of how you're feeling. Like when I do trauma therapy, for example, I do a lot of check-ins with their body. And so often people, myself included, are unaware when they're feeling tense and stressed until they start to recognize that tension in their back and their shoulders, but not until we ask them repeatedly, where are you feeling it in your body? So there's just this awareness that starts to come the more that we are intentional about things and mindful about how we're feeling. For myself personally, I've discovered that I feel best when I follow a lifestyle closer to the blue zone way of life, or even like a mild vegan type of diet, or like a Mediterranean diet, that they're all very similar, which means that I don't eat a lot of meat or dairy or other animal products. Now, I'm not completely that way. I choose to do those things in moderation because I feel a lot better. Now, I'm not saying I'm amazing here. I am very much human, but I try to get closer and closer to that the older that I get. We slowly started changing our buying habits. Like now we don't buy yogurt very often. We have an alternative milk that we drink. We really only use cheese for the most part for dairy products. And we eat meat more to flavor something. Like I'd heard in one of these podcasts and several books that I had read, that you treat meat almost like a condiment. So what does that mean? Well, that just basically means that there's a small portion. Like if you were to put all of the meat in one little portion on your plate, it would be about the amount of sauce you would put on something. Like just this tiny little portion of your plate would be meat. So when we have meat in a meal, it's just mixed in and it's smaller pieces. It's not this big chunk of meat. And we've just slowly gotten to that place over time where now it feels almost a little bit strange to have this big chunk of meat. And we really only eat meat more like that when we go out to eat or something like that. Again, I'm not telling you to be this mild vegan or follow blue zones or any of these things. I'm just telling you to do what truly feels right for you, to do things in moderation and really challenge the American diet. When I was doing some training at a gym years ago, I learned about these CDCs, so the Center for Disease Control, and this video they shared of how prevalent obesity is becoming in the nation. And I don't know about you, but for me, I thought in a lot of ways we were getting healthier, but this shows, the updated one shows, I think, until 2017. I'll link this video in the show notes, but it shows the CDC's numbers and what they report each year and how each state gets darker and darker in that color that shows that obesity rate, where now most states range from 30 to 35% obesity. The only one that has a lower one, the only state left, is Colorado. And so what does this tell us? Well, this tells us that we are getting more and more unhealthy every single year, and that our longevity is actually going to decrease. So that age of 77 right now, or 78, that is likely going to get lower we are going to live longer than our children or our grandchildren potentially. I would definitely encourage you to watch that video that I will link because it really does map it out very well. And that's some pretty hard data from the CDC that shows what is happening. Number 6 is kind of funny because of my audience, but number 6 says wine at 5. So that just means these cultures will drink wine, but not all of them. And really what they're saying is that you need to have a healthy relationship with alcohol if you drink alcohol, because your health will be adversely affected if you don't. And there are, to be fair, some benefits that are in wine. And there are some studies that show that there are some benefits of things in wine that can help. But you can also get that from other things like grapes or grape juice if you want that benefit. Also keep in mind that one of the blue zones is from Loma Linda, California, among the Seventh-day Adventists. And the Seventh-day Adventists do not drink alcohol, and they are incredibly healthy. So you do not need to drink alcohol to have the benefits of the blue zones or to really be healthy, just so you know. Okay, number 7, family first. Living in a thriving family is worth 6 extra years of life expectancy. Now, if you're a Latter-day Saint, family is likely a major value for you, as it is with many other faith-based communities, and not just faith-based. A lot of people really value family. Even when your family might be driving you crazy, they're actually giving you an extra 6 years. Well, to be fair, if that's super toxic and detrimental, maybe not, but typically they are giving you an extra 6 years because of that connection. Number 8, belong. Recommit, reconnect, and explore a faith-based community. No matter which faith, studies show that people who show up to their faith community 4 times a month live an extra 14 years. So this is not just the kind of community you come to for Easter or for Christmas. This is coming each week. I think that was incredible, that number there. An extra 14 years. So that faith-based community is really important. One of my sons is struggling right now wanting to go to church, and I just had a conversation with him about this after I did this study. And I just shared that there are so many benefits from attending church, and it's not just to get entertained or to have it be fun, but this is one of those nice benefits that we might not even recognize, that connection and that increased longevity and that sense of belonging. And the last one is number 9, the right tribe. So friends have a long-term impact on well-being. Expand your social circle to include healthy-minded, supportive people. So this could be the most powerful way to add years to your life. Dan said that if your 3 best friends are overweight, there's a 50% chance you'll be overweight. Diets do not work, and I'll talk about that more and give you some numbers on that. But in almost every case, you're worse off afterwards. So I never recommend yo-yo dieting, but I recommend lifestyle changes. Friends add more years to your life, and the most significant thing you can do to increase your longevity is to have good, healthy friends. I just love that. That's not something you hear talked about too much on health podcasts or when you read health books. So I just want to give a little shout out to some friends out there. I'm not going to be able to list you all, so don't be offended if I don't say your names. But I'm thinking about Liz and April, Emily, Becca, Jen, Anna, and my amazing longtime book club friends and more. I just want to thank you for all the extra years of life you've given me because of your examples of health and support. I'm sure many of you are like, I'm not really that healthy. In so many ways you are. Whether it's physically or mentally or spiritually, you are a major support to me. So thank you for being someone I can reach out to when needed. And I hope that you will thank your friends as well for giving you all that extra longevity. Let that be your little action moment for this episode. Reach out to your friends and thank them for that increased longevity and quality of life, because they're really going to help you reach that 100 plus of healthy years to come free of disease. I just want to end by reminding you about Igniting Life that I'm launching August 21st of this year. Like I've said before, there are limited seats available, so sign up now on fulfillment.therapy.org or email me at fulfillment.therapist@gmail.com. And this 12-week course is about resetting your life and getting back on track after the summer and really getting back into that structure and those healthy habits and those routines and really taking a deep dive into how you can ignite your life in a way that maybe you haven't before and get on track before the holidays so that you are making these wiser choices that will keep you happy and thriving and fulfilled. Now for the viral video I know you've been waiting for. Just a little side note here. Do you guys know how much time I spend looking at these things? Like, it's just a small part of my research, but it ends up sucking up a lot of time because I am laughing so hard at some of these things, which is why I can't do this every episode because it ends up taking a long time. Anyway, this is only a 5-second long video and I put it in the show notes and you're going to really enjoy it. But I'm not going to tell you what happens, even though you'll know when you see the video link. But a girl gets knocked out by something surprising. That's all I'll say. And it's a reporter of some kind, I think. So a blooper on live TV that was pretty epic. And I think it has well over 10 million views from the different places, but super funny for a 5-second video. Anyway, go check it out and remember that your influence creates ripples. So share the good things like this podcast. Please go ahead and share this episode with a friend that you think would benefit. And thank you to all of you that have reached out and told me how much you're sharing this. It makes a huge difference. And as always, please leave me a review if you have not yet done so. I hope you enjoyed this discussion on blue zones and that you learned a lot about how to optimize your health. I love this stuff and I hope you love it too, and that it blesses your life and the lives of those in your sphere of influence. Take care and have a fantastic day. We will see you back here soon. If this podcast has helped you gain the insights and skills needed to propel you towards transformation and joy, the number one way to help me is to leave a written review on Apple Podcast. Like you, I'm striving to become my higher self by helping others thrive, and I do that most effectively if you use your influence and give a review. Share this episode with a friend or share it on social media and let others know how it has helped you. I would be so very grateful and excited that we're creating positive ripples in so many lives. If you want to connect, you can find me on Fulfillment Therapy on Facebook and Instagram, or go to fulfillmenttherapy.org. Thanks for listening and shine boldly and brightly, my friend.